Hello viewers, welcome to another video on Excel. I am going to start a new series of videos on how to write macros in Excel, and this is the introductory video of that series where I am going to answer a few FAQs before moving on to the next video. So the first question that comes to mind is, what is a macro? Well, you can see these buttons on the left hand side. If I press any of the buttons, these two boxes change. There is a macro behind all these buttons which runs when I press the button and changes the rectangles. I'll go to Developer tab and I will go to Visual Basic. This is the environment you write your macros in. So when you go to this Developer tab and go to the Visual Basic editor, this is the editor that opens up. Here is the macro that is running when I press this what button. So this piece of code is all that runs when I press the what button. So that is a macro. When you press a button, it changes the rectangle. And there are scores of things that you can do in Excel with macros if you know how to write them. So the next question is, why should I use a macro? Well, you don't have to use a macro. Many people never use a macro and use Excel only. But there are repetitive tasks that you can automate using a macro. It'll save you a lot of time. So it makes sense to learn macros and use them. How to make a macro? There are two ways to make a macro. You can either record it or you can write it by hand. There is a macro recorder which is given in Excel, and here is the button for that macro recorder. So you can start recording a quick macro, or you can go into the Visual Basic editor. If you know how to write a macro, you can go directly into the Visual Basic editor and use the editor from there. Where is the macro code stored? The macro code is stored in the file that you choose while you record the macro. As I just showed you, there is a Visual Basic editor attached to the file, and the macro is stored there as text in one of the modules. If you are writing your macro, you can manually insert the module in any of these destinations. The macro can go into one of these destinations and you can choose that while you are recording your macro. So it can be attached to this workbook where you are working. It can be attached to a new workbook which Excel opens automatically in the background and attaches the macro there. And personal macro workbook. Personal macro workbook is a workbook where you store all your quick macros that you use on a daily basis. And this workbook opens up as soon as you open Excel, and it opens up automatically. You don't have to do anything to open it. You can use any general macros which are not specific to any project, and you can store them in your personal macro workbook. Do I have to learn another language? Unfortunately, yes. The name of the language is Visual Basic Applications, but this language is used in all Microsoft Office applications. Once you learn it, you can use it in Microsoft Word, Access, Outlook, etc. Language is the same in all the applications, only the object model is different in every application. In Excel, you have worksheets, ranges, workbooks, charts, etc. While in Word, you have documents, paragraphs, etc. So the objects that you use change with the application, but the language part remains the same. For loop, if conditions, and all the windows that are there in the Visual Basic Editor, they remain the same, but the object model is different in every application. How long will it take to learn the language? It took me about 1 year to learn the language, but as far as the learning is concerned, it is still going on. And with more and more projects, you learn more and more and gain experience. Is the language of any use? This question is asked often because there are so many languages out there that are thought to be more serious than Visual Basic for application. There is C++ or Java, and it is understood that these languages produce more robust code and they are more useful than this language. But I think this language is also useful when you are working in departments like finance or admin or HR, and you use Excel or other Microsoft Office applications regularly. This language is also useful for those who want to build their career in IT, and they want to learn a quick language which will help them in future. So if you are studying and you want to go into IT in future, you can start with this language as a first language, and it will teach you general programming as a starter, and then you can go deeper into other languages. For me, it has become a good pastime. Where should I start? For from recording macros in Excel is a good starting point. You can read the code and try to figure out what the code is doing. You can go to internet where a lot of literature is available. You can watch YouTube. Hopefully, my videos will help you learn the language. Is there a future in it? Well, to be honest, the language has become old. It was released around 1997. It was designed for desktop applications. Now, Excel is also going to be online. Today, you can go into your web browser, go to your Microsoft account, and from there, you can open a file in a web browser. And for that environment, they are developing a new language. This language won't work in that environment because it was not built for web applications. But having said that, the new platform is still under development and probably would take time. Microsoft doesn't have any plans to remove the desktop version of applications soon, and the language will be there in the desktop version. So it will be there for some time. This language is easier, in my opinion, than other languages, and it is always available with every copy of Excel. Also, there is no compilation of code in this language. That is an extra step that you have to do in Java or C++. So it saves you a lot of time. You can just write your code and test it and see how it works. What next? So let us record a macro without further ado in the next video and see how things work. Thank you for your time and stay tuned.